We've got some practitioners here and kind of have some questions. You may have questions for them at the conclusion. You're welcome to come up and find them and ask them that. Of course, we've got Jeremy. We've got Luis Mendoza here, and he is the director or the head of our multi-ethnic church planning center. It was a joint venture of the North American Mission Board, the Missouri Baptist Convention, and Blue River, Kansas City. Some years ago, we were able to help purchase an old Presbyterian church, and Pastor Luis is the host church. He's been an incredibly gracious host as he pastors a congregation there, but then has also, we call it kind of an incubator for church plants, and mostly among immigrant people groups down in the historic Northeast, and he has been an incredible help and host in that. Of course, we got Jeremy. We've got Matt Miller. He is our Sin City missionary. North American Mission Board places people out in various areas of the country to kind of oversee and catalyze and help do all the assessments that are necessary when somebody wants to plant or replant. And so we're going to hear a little bit more from him. And then Brian is from the Multiplying Churches part of the Missouri Baptist Convention. He's here with us tonight, and he also works in the area of the immigrant church planting as well. So we're going to start with Jeremy here tonight. And Jeremy, first question that we have is tell us some things that surprised you about this journey that you've been on, some mistakes you've made along the way, some things that you did right.
Thanks, bud. So then you start to experience the Lord like do all this stuff around you and like, oh, this is amazing. We start talking to these group in Coeur d'Alene. We start talking to a group down in South Carolina. We talk about a group in Missouri. And we just see the Lord is the one bringing about really a lot of talk of collaboration. So the first thing is just the way the Spirit has worked. I think the mistakes we've made, I think one is not being clear up front about what churches can give and receive. So I think we made that mistake early on where a lot of times we came in and you come with that attitude of we want to help. Well, sometimes when you want to help and someone wants to receive and you don't clarify expectations, it actually sets up a really bad relationship. So that was one. And then number two, I think in all of our desire to share stories, I think people start connecting dots and they think they're going to get all of these things from being a part of Calvary Family. And we weren't really clear about, we're not committing to all these things. These are just different ways that we've partnered by each other. And then starting to see people feel burned at different points because, we thought we would get this, this, and this. And we let people down. And so I would say those are two mistakes we made. As far as things we did right, I think leading through relationship, I think that always relationship has driven everything. And then another thing was focusing early on developing leaders. I think that was an important piece to all this is who are we raising up to think about how we can do this together? So those were some things that I think the Lord in His kindness allows us to do.
So what would you say are some of the costs of partnering with other churches, and maybe what are the costs of not partnering?
Yeah, good one. The cost of partnering with other churches is it's slow, it's messy, and it's vulnerable. Those are the three things I can easily say. When you work with other people, it's going to slow down the process because you're co-creating with others. It's messy. There's a lot of times that it doesn't work. Oh, it doesn't work this way over here. Or we don't do this over here. And then it's vulnerable. You get really excited about an idea, and then all of a sudden you're sharing it with a group and they're not excited about it, and it gets blown up pretty quickly. The costs of not doing it, I think number one is just the kingdom versus castle mentality. So do we experience the castle, our castles, or are we experiencing His kingdom? And when I experience my castle, I control it, but it's really kind of dark and insulate. I mean, it's like kind of dingy. I may have control of it, but it's not that impressive. But when I experience His kingdom, like the Lord doing things that only He can accomplish, and it feels like He's the king of it, not me. It feels compelling. It feels like I'm a part of something bigger than myself. And all of a sudden I come to bed at night not pretending like I have control over it and feeling really like thankful to be a part of it. And then number two, I think we've experienced things that we would never have experienced if we just did it on our own. Like things that we've been able to be a part of, I would have only dreamed about if we had just limited to what was happening inside of our church.
So, part of what we're saying tonight is there are churches who have initially the capacity to maybe be the host church or to plant, but maybe sometimes smaller churches, more normative sized churches kind of underestimate what they can do. What would you say to maybe a smaller church?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen how some of our smaller churches have come and served the larger churches or provided perspective that the larger churches lose. So some of the smaller churches really challenge the missional nature of some of our larger churches. Because you get them in the same room, and you know what it's like to be in a small church. Everyone has to be on mission. Everyone. But when you're in a big church, sometimes people can sit in the back and just kind of be consumers. Isn't that right? So when you bring those people together, you bring this missionary spirit that can challenge and bring encouragement in ways that you can never imagine. That's one example. We've also seen them serve radically, like at some of their big events, and then also just be praying meaningfully for those other churches.
Thank you. I know there's a lot more questions you probably got for Jeremy, and we're going to try to stay on schedule tonight. So moving on down to Brian. And Brian is a Multiplying Churches missionary for NBC. How are you working with North American Mission Board and churches on the ground to plant multi-ethnic churches and ethnic churches?
I was going to say, so I worked with the NAM guys a lot more, really, with when we were not Ascend State. Now let me clarify, there's a lot of beauty in this. NAM, since we are Ascend State now, Ascend Missouri, NAM's resources, NAM's training, NAM's assessment is top notch. So from that standpoint, I'm not working with them as much. But one of the things that we are doing as NBC, as we're trying to identify people groups, where they're living, where they dwell, trying to encourage our churches to, identify your neighborhood, what kind of people groups live around you. I don't know if you realize 1 in 12 people who live in the state of Missouri are immigrants. Like that's a large segment of the population. Matter of fact, I was sharing with our team one day that by 2050, I read the stat. I wish I would have saved it. I wish I could tell you but by 2050, they said that the majority of evangelicals in the United States would be of Hispanic origin, 51%. And so when I say that, with our partnership with NAM, really what we're doing as the NBC is trying to get our churches to identify the people groups or see the people groups around them. And then as we identify pastors or men who are called out, we're really just at that point, like I'll text Matt, like I'm working with a guy right now that's north of the river who is from the Congo originally. He's been in the United States about 6 years. Met him 3 months ago, and he's like, "Hey, I'm starting this church. I want to get going." And so I've been coaching him. We meet every other week, and then I've just passed him off to NAM. So really, the state is working, again, trying to identify the people groups. And then once we have a gentleman who's committed his life to planting, and is wanting to go through that process, then we're going to pass him off to NAM to walk through the assessment process, eventually go through training and things like that. So that's the reality of where we're working with.
And this is a question for either you or Matt, but Southern Baptists, I understand, have prioritized church planting among ethnic groups, knowing the change in demographics. Can you speak to that a little bit? I mean, we are planning a little heavy, very heavy among that
yeah,
group, right?
I mean, there's a number of things. Like, man, I wish there are so many great things going on. We've got some guys down in southeast Missouri that are planting Hispanic and Filipino churches that are multiplying like crazy. I'm talking churches of 20 to 25 who are like, "Hey, we found out some Filipinos are over here, and we're going to go plant another church." Or we have a guy that works with Luis and I through our Multiplying Churches group named Pastor Ali. Oh my goodness, I just butchered his name. Ali Yang. And Pastor Yang, since he's been in the United States 11 years, has planted 14 Burmese churches. And when he finds like Burmese people are somewhere, like he drove to Minnesota on his own dollar. He's like, "I heard there's Burmese people up here. We're going to plant a church." And he goes and meets with the people, shares the gospel with them, and then he'll be like, "Hey, you're the Bible study leader." And then they'll just start to develop leaders and stuff like that. And then we've got another guy down in southwest Missouri, same thing with Hispanic churches. They just launched a Hispanic church, I believe, in Carthage, and Luis could probably speak more to that on this. But it's awesome what's going on. I mean,
So 4 of your funded planters in Missouri, 2 are Congolese, 2 are Hispanic works, Luis being one of those as well, and Luis Sanchez at Northland Baptist Church. One of the focuses, Greg, this year, not just this year, but it's become a greater priority, is Sin Network Espanol. And so Jorge is the one who is our point lead. Luis, you might want to speak to this a little bit with what you know, but they're doing more specific training to help identify and encourage and support our Hispanic leaders here in Kansas City. And so I'll speak to this a little bit when we get to it, but when you contribute to your association, to the cooperative program, to Annie, man, you're helping fund these pastors. One Congolese guy whose name is Jacques, I've fallen in love with this guy, but he has 130 people in his Congolese church, right? And I'm like, how do we help this pastor continue to reach a people in a people group that aren't going to be walking into the church that I pastor? And when you give, those things are happening. So it's good stuff, Greg.
Thank you so much. So we addressed a little bit earlier the problem with developing new leaders, the lack of young men and women surrendering to vocational ministry, and those numbers are seen in our seminaries, some of our state colleges. But there's some things being done, Brian, and do you want to kind of address some of the things we're doing to look at developing leaders around the state?
Yeah, to like Greg brought up, between 250 and 300 churches in Missouri Baptist churches are without a pastor, right? And I mean, some in BRKC, I mean, the rural is a big one, and they're trying to identify guys. As I've met with even DOMs and stuff around the state, they're like, how do we get a seminary guy to move out here? And I'm like, you want him to move to a town of 400? Like, number one, they're not going to connect with your local community. Number two, I don't know the local community can necessarily do it. But with that, we've also seen, so we have what's called the Pastor Mentorship Initiative that the Missouri Baptist Convention has come alongside pastors. We've done, this is our second year. We do 50 pastors a year that we ask the pastor to train and develop a man or men in their church who have submitted to their call to ministry. And we ask them to train in their context. So we're not asking you to take them through a seminary class. We're asking you to give them the nuts and bolts of the everyday rigors and the things that they need to prepare them so that they can go and pastor a church, being bivocational or maybe eventually being a full-time person. But that's one of the things. And we'll come alongside you as the Missouri Baptist Convention. We'll give you $2,400 to do that, to fund that. And you can use it whether it's for resources to resource them, or you can give them a small stipend of $100 a month and then use half for resources. But that's what, we've got 50 this year. And one of the things I was excited about, we have 20 are in rural areas, 24 are in the urban areas, and 6 are multi-ethnic. So what I was encouraged about is we have over 10% of our pastors being trained in the Pastor Mentorship Initiative are ethnic pastors. So we're excited about that as well.
Thank you. And only thing I would add to that is I was invited last week. I spent Monday and Tuesday in Jeff City at the Baptist building. We started out with Resound Revitalization, and it was that portion that helps churches self-assess and do the deep dive and decide what it's going to take to get healthy and grow again. But over the last couple of years, that's expanded to Resound Disciples and Resound Leaders, and we spent both of those days developing a discipleship process that churches could use and kind of tweak it for their needs in their church. So many times churches say, we just don't know how to make disciples. We don't know how to disciple people. Well, you're about to see some resources come out, so watch for that. We also recognize that, we've got to call out the called. And once we call out the called, we've got to be able to develop these young leaders. Like Jeremy said, they'll get in over their head quick if they don't get some training. And so we're developing the developing leaders portion of that too. So that'll be a big help to those of you who are trying to develop a leadership pipeline. Anybody who's pastored any given amount of time knows that the quickest problem you run into is, I don't have a leader to lead that, to teach that class, to lead that discipleship, to disciple another person, whatever it is, you name it. You've got to develop leaders, and that's what this will do. So
can I add something?
Please,
to that?
yes.
That's a big challenge that we have among Hispanics and other people groups, that we don't have enough leaders. I mean, I don't speak Swahili. I don't speak Congolese or some of those languages. So a great need that we have is for us to be able to develop those leaders, because unfortunately, I mean, so many times we would like to start something, but we don't have the people to help us to do that. Obviously, I mean, if you're going to develop anything among English speakers, well, that's the language that is spoken in the United States, but that's not the same reality, you know, among the people groups that we're trying to reach out. So that's through some of the programs that we're developing through the Missouri Baptist Convention and through the association, we have been able to seek for some people to come and see if we can start the process of develop them in such a way that they can help us to plant new churches around the city or around the state, because otherwise we're not going to be able to accomplish the goal that we have in mind, you know, for 2024 and for the next 5 years. So there is a big challenge, but I think I'm going to be mentioning briefly, you know, some of those points later, so I just want to add that to that specific point.
Thank you. And we're going to move on to Luis as director of the Multi-Ethnic Church Planting Center. He's down in the historic Northeast, where so many times when the immigrants from wherever they are in the world come, they often settle in this area. And so he is one of the first contacts they have. And he operates beside this church planting center, an international welcome center where a lot of things get done. And so I guess, first of all, Luis, kind of tell us about what have you been seeing in terms of people groups, immigration, those who are underserved, and where you know that we need to plant churches.
Okay, I'm gonna be really brief. I guess what I have seen, or what we have seen, is in the last 2 years, we know for sure, based on the statistics, that we have received at least 1 million people, newcomers to the United States. The last 2 years, those people are coming from Haiti, coming from Cuba, coming from Venezuela, and they're coming from Nicaragua. Those are the 4 countries from which we are receiving more people here. That means that beside Haiti, the rest of the people arriving, they speak Spanish. So we have a great opportunity to reach out to Hispanic people in the United States right now. I mean, this is just the addition, you know, to the rest of Hispanics that we have in the country. So based on that reality, I understand that, you know, we have a big challenge, just like I was saying earlier, and we really need to develop more people in order to be able to make sure that we can have enough church plants, or at least enough Bible studies around the cities, so we can start impacting the community, because otherwise we're not going to be able to do it. So, you know, I really believe that, you know, we really need to work together, which is something that I would like to address later, if possible.
Yeah, I believe that was kind of my next question for you,
Yeah.
had to do with how individuals or churches can kind of engage in this and network
Yes.
with you, how, you know, you can help them somewhat. But
Okay, I'm gonna go, you know, all over quickly, so please be patient with me. The first thing is, I really believe that if we would like to reach out to the people coming to the United States, especially Hispanics, you know, we have to understand the reason why they're coming here. They're coming to the United States, and I know for sure, you know, that the reason why they're coming is because of the realities that they face in their countries. So that's the first thing. You know, we have to have understanding. So why are they here? Well, because the situation in their countries is really bad. I can tell you that. So once that we understand that, I certainly believe that we have to take advantage of this opportunity, because God is sending us these people, you know, and He has a reason. I mean, I believe God is providential. I believe that God knows everything, and He's sending these people for a reason, and we have to take advantage of the opportunity. So we can be maybe blind and say, well, you know, that's not my issue, that's not my problem. But the reality is that God is sending them here. God sent me in 1989. I grew up Catholic. I didn't know anything about, you know, being a Baptist. And I remember when I came here the first time, I mean, I became a believer because the reason why I became a believer was because I was lonely. You know, I didn't know what else to do. So somebody invited me to go to church in Miami. And I said, well, you know, today's Sunday. What am I going to be doing? Somebody invited me. I went, and I'm here tonight. See, just like that. So the point is that we have to make sure that we take advantage of the opportunity. And Jeremy, and I'm talking about this Jeremy here, I mean, he was talking about some of the points that I was going to mention tonight, and one of those points is collaboration. I think we have to change the mindset of working together, because I think if we're gonna be really working together, we're gonna have to say, well, it's not gonna be my way. Because unfortunately, that's the reality. You know, so many times, okay, you know, I'm gonna be working with you, but this is what we're gonna do. Well, that's not really working together. You're telling me what to do, so I'm gonna be working for you. That's a different thing. And this is my point tonight, and I want to be very clear, specifically on this point. If we really want to see, the different people groups of Missouri, and even the United States, we're going to have to be working together in a different way. Meaning, this is the need, how can you help? I mean, with all you're able to help, meaning resources, knowledge, and everything that you can be helpful with in this specific situation. To me, that's collaboration. Just working together with the plan of reaching in a specific goal. In this case, will be to reach out to different people groups. I don't have a lot of knowledge about all the people groups, but I know how to reach out some groups. So we need help from people, sitting in the pews. We need help from people in leadership in the different organizations and churches. And we need to make sure that we understand that that's the only way that we're going to be able to do something. You were saying something that is so true. That was actually your first point. Your first point. This is much bigger than me, much bigger than you, really. So, and the only way that we can, accomplish the goal is, hey, let's work together, because otherwise we're not going to be able to do a lot. And yes, we're going to be building our kingdom, but I don't think that's the biblical approach.
Thank you, Brian.
Well, I was just going to say that, I think it's on. I don't know. Can you hear me? I didn't push a button. Oh, there we go. All right. I think, there's a couple of things that stuck out. Number one, for those of you who don't know, Luis actually was my assessor for church planting 12 years ago. And then I ended up not planting a church. I went to a dying church, 15 people. And so here we go, walk into this church at 15, and I'd been there a month, and I meet Luis, and he's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm pastoring a church. And he goes, I thought you were planting. I was like, well, God kind of had other things in store. And I said, but I need to talk to you because we have a Hispanic population around our church, and I know they're not coming to my church, right? They're not going to come in. They don't speak, 90% of them didn't speak any English. And he goes, great, I got a guy I want to plant out there. And so we were a church of, at that time, 20 people who all we had to offer was our building. I couldn't offer healthy leaders, right? Our church was basically 1 foot in the grave. But I knew that Luis had this partner, this young man he had been training, and I knew that we had a place, and that's what takes place. And then, as I think about, you were asking about the NAM partnership and everything else like this, when we changed and NAM or Missouri became a Sin state, and my boss Rick came to us and said, hey, we want to reach the people groups. Man, my first worry was, oh my gosh, I don't know where to start with that. I've been dealing with English-speaking pastors the whole time I work for the convention. And so there's a lot of things that are going on, and I can't tell you, God is at work in the state of Missouri, not just with planting English-speaking churches, but with our multi-ethnic churches around the state, even in small rural towns. I mean, tiny rural towns. Milan, Missouri, 47% of the population is immigrant. Town of 2,700 people. 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 2, You go onto Milan, Missouri's town square, there's 5 Mexican restaurants. It's an old school rural Missouri town that looks like you're in Mexico. Like they're all painted buildings, and then there's an African restaurant.
Without the traffic.
Yeah. Yeah, no traffic. But so I do want to say that, man, like I can't encourage enough, like even when Jeremy was bringing up a lot of the stuff, like how I just see God kind of work that in our church, right? But at the same time, really how these partnerships with NAM, Missouri Baptist Convention, the local association, the partnership between Luis's church and my church, how God's worked all that out and just in the midst of that. And I can't express enough about who the hero is of that.
That's right. And I will say to Luis's credit, for a long time, he has been hosting events, dinners, training events to pull together ethnic pastors for encouragement and training, and it's been incredible to see that. We've got one kind of on the docket you want to do for worship leaders in the new year, and so we're trying to put that together, and he's taken the lead on that.
And we've been working. Luis is I don't even know how to brag on him enough. But like if you are interested, if you're an English-speaking pastor and you're interested in building relationships with some ethnic pastors, we do it every other month. It's called our Cross-Cultural Pastors Collective. We're doing it on October 30th, which is a Monday night. And for those of you who are like, well, I work during like my hours, like Monday nights don't work, but we're trying to connect our ethnic pastors who are all bivocational. Some of them working 2 and 3 jobs. And so we really want to connect with them. And so we're asking our English-speaking pastors to sacrifice a little bit to come build relationships and partnerships so that your church could hopefully potentially partner with whether it's Congolese or Indian or Hispanic church around the Kansas City area or Missouri in order to make more impact for the kingdom in that way.
And if you lose track of that date or time, always just check our BRKC online calendar, and we post those things for you. We're almost done, and I appreciate everyone's patience, but I mean, this is blown by for me because this is incredible to hear all of this. But one last person, Matt, we saved you for the last here.
There you go.
And so in case someone doesn't know, kind of refresh us on the North American Mission Board and the SEND Initiative's way of working with churches, state conventions, associations to plant churches. What's involved in that?
Sure. So I want to give you some information, some stats that I think could be really encouraging to you as the lead pastors, as your team that are here. So the first thing I want to say is state conventions, local associations, and the SEND network doesn't plant churches, right? We are a family of churches that plant churches. Amen. So our responsibility is to come alongside guys like Alan Finley, who's pastor in Overflow, Dan Neighbors, who is one of our newly endorsed planters, who is with the Calvary churches out of Denver here in Kansas City. And we work with churches as they plant churches. So here are some fun facts for us to know about. If you are a church who contributes to the cooperative program, if you are a church who gives to Annie Armstrong, I want to make you aware of what's happening with your church planting dollars in our city. In the KC Metro, we currently have 29 endorsed church planters, which is really great. That's a really good size number. So you may have no idea, but you are funding and supporting 29 church planters on their church planting journey, such as Alan, such as Dan. Right? Of those 29 planters, 17 of those are in the state of Missouri. So you have 17 planters. That means a church planter would be somebody who is about to plant, or they're within their first 5 years. So they're in so far further ahead. Thank you for their support, right? And so, but you've got 17 that you're currently supporting. Of those 17, 6 of them haven't even planted yet. They're in that launch phase, building core team phase, the phase that Alan and his wife Mary just moved out of, right? They're praying desperately that this thing actually happens. And so you've got 6 on the Missouri side that are waiting to plant. They should be planting in 2024. Of those 17 churches, this is a fun number, that represents 12 sending churches. A sending church is a church that has either identified that planter from their pews and their chairs and have developed and sent them out. And if that planter was a NASCAR, that church is stickers on the hood, All right, that's what I mean by that they're the sending church. But we've got 12 sending churches in the state of Missouri who are over those 17 or sending out those 17 plants. What that would look like also is if Dan, as a planter, if he is got a struggle that he's facing, and he will face some, his first call is going to be to his sending church, Jeremy. And then if Jeremy's like, hey, we're not in a place where we can do that, then the next call's to me as the city missionary in Kansas City. And then I do what I can with the resources I have to make sure that Dan has the support he's needed. So what I do is I work a lot with the sending churches to make sure that you are most equipped and resourced so that you get to be the second hero, Jesus being the first, I took notes, and the second hero in the life of that church planter. And so that's what a sending church is. Currently in the city, talking about leadership pipeline, Greg, I host a citywide church planting residency, and we currently have 7 leaders in our church planting residency that are on their way to planting a church. And so that's an exciting thing to be a part of. The first thing that Jeremy said was begin with the problem that God cares about, but you can't solve by yourself. Well, here's our problem. We're trying to reach 1% of the population of Kansas City with the gospel of Jesus Christ. And so the network that's local for you in with the dollars that you support, the Send Network, man, we're passionate about engaging the lostness of our city. To that 1% of our city, Jesus is known because of the church planting efforts that is happening through our generous funding. So that's the awareness. Hey, your dollars are making a big difference in church planting in the Kansas City metro area. I want to now share with you how you to help discover what a next step could be. And I want to talk about becoming a supporting church. A supporting church is a church that says, hey, Matt, we're not in a place where we can send a guy out yet. I don't know if we have the resources. I know we don't have the leader, but man, we can pray. And so I want to brag on Travis Yergins back here. I don't know if you guys know Travis, but Pastors Water's Edge. Travis, why don't you stand up? Travis Pastors Water's Edge Church just had a beautiful merger with Sterling Acres and has this great facility. And Travis is opening up his facility that he now provides oversight for. And there is 2 outside church groups who are coming in to support and help our church planters, such as Alan. One's coming in October, a collegiate group from the University of Arkansas. And in December, we got a group coming from Rockwall, Texas, that's coming in to do some stuff after Christmas. And Travis is like, hey, they can stay at my place, they can use our showers, and they can mess up my facility, right? I mean, and that is a big deal. And when I told Travis that on the phone, and I'm telling him that publicly. But there are ways that you like. Travis, you can sit down. I'm gonna keep standing. But one of my favorite verses right now is Mark 6:38. Mark 6:38 is one of the feeding stories, and they're like, "What do we?" And Jesus says, "What do you have? Go and see." And every church in here has the opportunity to partner with churches like the Calvary Family of Churches, or the Send Network, or Greg, let's start something new, right? But we have the opportunity to take what you have, whether it be big or small, and make a difference in the life of our church planters. And man, I just want to invite you to be a part of what we're doing. I wear the city missionary hat, but I'm also a church planter myself, right? And I just want to encourage you guys. I'm going to encourage you like this. It ain't easy. I'm in so far over my head, I have no idea what I'm doing. Praise the Lord for what you said, right? It lets me know that I'm on the right track. But man, you guys can do this. And there are church planters in our city who need your encouragement, who need your support. And so what we do is we help identify them, we help assess them, and we help provide care for them and their spouses. And we do that through your generosity. So I want to say thank you. It's very, very much appreciated.
That's right. Matt is not just a Sin City guy. He's a practitioner, a pastor of a network of churches, the New City Network. Yes, How many churches?
We are planning our 5th campus this January. Amen. And we have 13 house churches that are also a part of our network.
Amen. And that's on both sides of the line, right?
Yep. We have one in Raytown, New City Church Raytown, with Pastor Price Wright.
That's right. Okay. Thank you. I think there's one last question.
Ask away.
So as you travel around, you talk to sending churches and planting church planters and church plants. What is it that encourages you?
It encourages me that we have 29 planters. It encourages me that we got a lot of guys who are about to plant. It encourages me to get guys like Dan, who moved from Toledo, Ohio, here to Kansas City. It encourages me when we have pastors like Travis. We have pastors like Alan. there is a lot of work to be done, right? Here's how you can pray for us, is we have to get better at engaging our city with the lostness. Like we have to get better at not just starting Sunday services, but engaging the city with the gospel, making disciples and planting churches, and not doing that the reverse way. Right? This is a big preaching point for our network right now. Let's not plant churches in hopes that we make disciples so that we engage the city. We need to flip that model, and so we're working hard to engage the city with the gospel. Like, what are the ways that we can let our neighbors know that what we're doing and why we're doing it for? How do we make disciples with those individuals, and then together let's plant a healthy disciple-making church. And but that's the work. It's a whole lot easier to start a service on Sunday and let's find a worship guy and a worship lady and a preacher, and then no. Man, I care about this neighborhood. And so that's what I'm hopeful for.
Amen.
Greg.
Thanks for that corrective. That is so good.
Yes, sir.
Hey, give these guys a hand.